I've played a lot of the TotalWar games. You could even say I'm a fan. I've played many of them, but Rome 1 and Medieval 2 are really up there. They're my favorites. There's really something about these games that really captivates me. I think part of managing an army, then choosing where to send it, while also managing the quite simple economy in most of those games. When you think about it, it's really simple. Then balancing the internal investment and army spending are the sort of decision that tickles my brain. It just really entertains me for some reason. Now, I need to preface a bit by explaining what Total War games are a bit, just in case some viewers have never played a Total War game or even seen it. In these kinds of game, you control a faction or a nation, whatever you want to call it, and you're its ultimate authority. The goal of the game is essentially to color the most amount of the map with the same color. Which color, you may ask? Well, yours. The most important part normally is controlling your armies in the tactical map and defeating your enemies, but there's also a strategic map where you actually decide what to do, to build, to recruit, and where to send your armies, or even who you want to do diplomacy with. Except if it's Milan. Never ever trust Milan. Milan will betray you at every occasion possible. Every time they betray me, and I still keep trusting them for some reason. But enough about that. I think they are very interesting for any fans of management game, but that's not really what I want to talk about here. There's something about this series that always fascinated me. Once you engage into a battle, assuming the AI doesn't run away like cowards, once you finally beat the opposing army, you will be faced with the grim sight of a sea of corpses. It can be easy to miss. It's easy to miss it because you will be too busy running after the survivors, so you don't have to fight them another day, of course. But if you slow down just a bit and look back at what happened, you cannot miss it. When I take the time to look at these images after achieving victories, it really breaks the illusion of greatness for me. You're slowly reminded of the price of victory. A gruesome sight for most people, I hope, and the only solution would just to not play the game. These views often reminds me of a dialogue in one of my favorite shows.
Outside of yourself, the entire Admiralty should be ashamed of their incompetence. Over 1 million people died in a single battle because of them. It's a complete ethical disgrace.
I don't know if I agree with you there. The admirals may have been foolish by allowing that many people to die. But then, what if we'd been on the winning side and killed over 1 million of their soldiers? Should we be praised for taking that many lives? Whether you win or you lose, there's no place for ethics in war.
I'm glad to see you haven't changed one bit.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be argumentative.
Games have one very powerful advantage over movies and documentaries. You interact with them. Most games give you agency on the story being shown to you. For either movies or video games or some random video on YouTube, the story being transmitted to you will reflect what the developers' ideas are and their biases in the final product. Whether you read a book, watch a documentary, or play a historical game, the content might not be the absolute truth, but the emotions they make you feel are real. Team sports are a good example for learning if an individual is a good team player. Players learn through their own mistakes because they experience it firsthand. With a book, you could agree with the character's decision. With a game, you would choose to agree and perform the decision. For a Total War title that I like playing so much, they place me into the role of a sort of all-powerful ruler that controls a nation's army. Now, I doubt many of those who will watch this video will have been in the position of commanding an army in the actual real world, just by statistics alone anyway. So playing a Total War game will probably be the closest you will ever be in your life to that situation. Of course, I know there's other games too. I'm just choosing this one for a subject. But from that experience, I believe gives you interpretation of war you cannot understand from simply watching movies. From watching a blockbuster movie, you might get the thrill of enjoying a good battle scene, and you will cheer for the victorious because that's what the movie wants you to feel, and not what you have achieved. I can watch an entire war movie like All Quiet on the Western Front or Saving Private Ryan, and I'll probably be baffled by the decision given by the generals, because that's the point of those movies. And we've never been in those situations. I think this is why Total War games always leave me with such a strong impression. It leaves you feeling like you've accomplished a narrative of history. You did those events, while also reminding you at every end of battles of what it cost in men. Like many other historical Total War fans, I'm an historian enthusiast. I love reading about it, learning the different versions given by different sides and how the story changed with the flow of time. Total War games have this freedom of letting you roleplay a nation and remake history or change it. And of course, in the image of the developers, or that have been tweaked for engaging gameplay. But after playing this game, I think I can finally say, I get it now. I've sent thousands of soldiers to fight battles that I knew would be a grinding match of attrition, causing many casualties on both sides because I knew I would win. But I also knew if I didn't, I would lose the advantage of numbers, time, and resources, and therefore drag the war for even longer. Especially like Siege and Medieval 2, I've also lost battles and far more soldiers than I wanted because of bad decisions, lack of information, or even simple negligence on my own part. I've purposefully sent cheap peasants in front of the cavalry charge, knowing full well they would take massive casualties, because I wanted to protect my full plate knights behind them that I needed to win the battle later on. This kind of decision becomes second nature and even part of your strategy the longer you play. It doesn't change that I try to minimize the damage, but I know it will happen to one of my unit, and I chose that one. Not so long ago, I diverted a part of my army to infiltrate behind enemy lines, using ships to raid their undefended cities. I knew I would not be able to keep those cities under control, but I knew I could use this small window of opportunity to destroy both manpower and infrastructure to recruit more soldiers. In the end, it broke the stalemate, and I was able to win the war. But the worst part was that most of the other towns had seen so much recruitment, they were almost ghost towns. Would it have saved more lives if I had continued in the war of attrition instead of a cunning move that hurted the cities? When you play a Total War game, you usually try to save as many men as you can, but not necessarily for humanitarian reasons. When I win the battle defending a bridge from a horde of migrating nomads and lose only a few men, I'm happy because I know I can keep holding the position and my land safe just a bit longer. When I go on the offensive and win an heroic victory against my foe, I feel proud for myself for winning against the odds, but I also know that in most cases, it means I can keep pushing without needing to wait for reinforcement. And in some of the titles, you will have limited manpower, so winning with little casualties becomes important, not because humans are important, but because they become a game of resource management. I've also played a mod called Third Age with some mod Divide and Conquer for Medieval 2, in which you can play the events of the Lord of the Ring. I push back the orcs and goblins with no remorse, because they're not humans. In this fantasy world, orcs are by definition evil, and I'm therefore doing the right thing by wiping them from the face of Middle Earth. I hope I don't have to explain how these feelings can be translated to real-world events. Now, there is one important thing to understand about Total War before I conclude the video. The campaign is played against an AI, which exists to play the game and therefore go to war and expand. Certain games will have better diplomacy than others, and some will fight you until the bitter end. You could call this an unfair comparison to real-world politics, but I think it's quite easy to find examples of wars dragging on far longer than necessary, or even wars fought to the bitter end, and of peace that were only postponing the violence. So yes, I think I can say I understand now. When I read about wars and the decision made by generals, now I feel like I understand certain behaviors and strategies that would sound so incomprehensible to me before. I understand that a general preserving as many soldiers and gaining their glory can go hand in hand, even though so many are lost in the process. I understand how dehumanizing an enemy can help you rationalize and even feel better about seeing a pile of corpses. Now, does that mean I see these behaviors and decisions as acceptable? Of course not. I'm not asking people to stop playing video games either. I certainly won't. War is horrible and it pushes people to make decisions you don't want to have to think about. And now I understand why. Do you know what you would have done in this situation? If not, I guess go play TotalWar. You might find out. Thank you very much for watching, and if you would like to share your thoughts about TotalWar games and how they made you feel, please share in the comments. I'm genuinely interested, not just for the YouTube algorithm, but like I've been thinking about this for so long. I'm curious what other people are thinking about. After talking about such a grim subject, I want to finish on a better note, and a quote from Carl Sagan, Pale Blue Dot, kept coming to me while I was writing, and I'm going to leave you all with this. Thank you sincerely for sticking to the end. It means a lot to me.
Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light.